In 1954, a man arrived in Japan claiming to be a businessman from the country of Taured, which the airport officials had never heard of. They put him in a hotel room overnight to figure out the matter, and when they arrived the next day, he had vanished without a trace. This is the story of the Taured Man. Welcome to Let's Be Briefed. I'm Sarah,
I'm Sydney.
and today we're going to discuss the story of the Taured Man. So, do you know much about this?
Kind of. Not really. Not a lot. I know that, general, he didn't, I know the general story, but
Okay.
not details.
Okay. So, first I'm going to say the story that I think everyone has heard before. So, it was July 1954 in Japan in the Haneda Airport, which is one of the airports that feeds Tokyo. So, at the time, they received around 125 flights each week, and a handful of them were international flights every day. So, a flight from Europe landed and people disembarked. And there was not as much security as now, but international travelers were still required to present their passport at customs for stamping. So one man described as Caucasian with dark hair and a beard, which is a lot of men,
Yeah.
but he hands over his passport, which had many stamps in it already, three of which were from Japan just that year. So he said he was a traveling businessman, and the only problem was that the Japanese official inspecting the passport had never heard of the country of origin. And thankfully, he did speak Japanese. So he explained he was from Taured, which is a country between the borders of France and Spain. And his work required him to travel internationally, and he learned Japanese because of his regular visits to the country for the past 5 years. He had an appointment with a Japanese company and a reservation at a hotel in Tokyo, and he also presented traveler's checks, his company's name, and a wallet full of other currencies. The man was taken to an office in the airport for further questioning due to the official never having heard of Taured before. Other officials entered the room with a world map and asked him to pick out his country on the map, which he right away pointed to a small country between France and Spain, but only in this world it's the Principality of Andorra. So people think he's from a different universe.
Oh.
But the story goes he grew frustrated, stating that Taured had been a country for over 1,000 years and this was some kind of prank, which I also feel like is typical, white man.
Yeah.
But the officials looked more into his story, and the company that he planned to meet with had never heard of him or his company before, and the hotel didn't have any reservations under his name. And also, the bank that had issued the traveler's checks didn't exist.
Okay, how do you. Okay. Okay. So like, sure, you could fake a passport, right? People do that. That's a
Yeah,
thing. But especially if it doesn't have to be look like a real one. You know what I mean? Like you can make up a fake passport because I'm sure they all have different stuff on the pages and whatever. So it wouldn't
right.
be that hard to format a fake passport when it doesn't have to look like anything that already exists. But
Especially back then, right?
right. Well, but actually back then you didn't have digital printing. So that would have actually been a lot harder to do because it if it were to look real, you'd have to have
Oh,
print plates or something. I don't know. Thinking
that's
about
true.
that, but where do you get fake travelers cashier checks whatever? That gets
Yeah,
me.
that
I mean,
gets
I
me.
guess it's the same thing, but
Yeah, and having multiple of them too, I guess if you. But yeah, you can't copy things like now or anything like.
right, it's not like you could just print. Like people have nice printers that can make that stuff look pretty authentic, but and
Yeah.
they didn't have digital plate making either back then. Like it was all oh my gosh. I'm already sucked in. Like it's
Okay.
a lot of work to make print plates.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were like, I don't even know how they did it before computers, because now they like digitally print, kind of like they lay down a pattern on the print plate and then expose it to something, probably like
Oh,
chemicals, and it
right.
washes out everything that wasn't covered. So what, he literally hand drew all of that stuff, because I think that's how they did
They
it.
drafted it all, yeah. That
Yeah,
would
like
be so much work.
yeah.
Yeah, and having stamps from past visits and stuff.
Right. Like that would be, you can't just willy-nilly make stamps. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, official Japanese stamps or whatever.
Right. How did he do that?
I don't know.
I already believe he's real.
Okay, well, this story does take a turn, but let me finish the
Okay.
typical story that people hear, I guess. Um, but yeah, obviously they're like, you are from somewhere that doesn't exist, so they couldn't let him in the country. So they confiscated all of his documentation and put him in an airport hotel with two security guards at the door for the night. And he was instructed to stay there until they could figure this out. So, um, this gave them time to investigate and maybe like criminally charge him for trying to come into the country under like false identification and stuff. But he had two guards there the whole time that he was there. So the next day, airport officials called him with no answer. So security checked the room and found it completely empty of like all things and him. And officials searched for the man's documents in the airport office where they had left them, and they were also gone. So that's usually how the story
What?
ends, is he just disappeared.
Okay, okay. I have questions. I'm sure they'll somehow be answered later, but how do you get, like, okay, again, maybe he like snuck out a window, whatever. But how do you get your documents back from,
Yeah, the
that's what,
office.
like he snagged him on his way out? Like that just, I guess, but
Yeah. Yeah,
must have been
so
what happened, but
the popular conclusion is that he's from a different universe and he was dumped into our universe temporarily and then was like sucked back to his
big
universe.
old glitch. That's
Yeah.
sketch.
Or I did see some other theories where like he was some kind of government agent from a country like post World War II and like they just made him from a made up country so no one would know what country he was actually from and he was like a spy or something. So
Oh,
they like pulled him out of it when he got caught. And like that's how,
okay.
but then like they still have to get the documents.
Right, but they could have sent someone in to steal him, I guess, if there's a whole like shadow government like backing him.
Right. Or it could be completely made up story. Well,
Are
okay,
you
let me.
about to tell me it is?
No, no, let me. I'm gonna get into it. No, I was very surprised by the conclusion of my research, but it's not made up, I don't think.
Ooh.
Parts are made up, I guess.
Well, every story has parts that are made up, right?
Yeah, yeah. First, I wanted to say, um, because this says July 1954, which Haneda Airport wasn't in operation until May 1955. So
Okay,
already
okay.
this story is wrong for that part. And I found the first telling of this story seems to be in a book published in 1981, which is titled The Directory of Possibilities, which were like short stories with spectacular or supernatural phenomena in it.
Oh.
So, like, the book lacks any sources for this particular story, and the author has also been accused of like making it all up to sell books, claiming that they're real, but they're actually like all made up.
I feel like it's like the scary stories we tell in the
Oh,
dark or
yeah.
whatever.
I love those so much.
I didn't like the drawings. They scared
Yeah, I
me, and
didn't
I
like it.
never
It's
checked them
true.
out because the drawings were too scary, which is
Oh.
hilarious because none of the stories were actually scary.
Yeah, but like they're for elementary school students,
Right,
right?
I
I remember
know.
getting them at the book fair or whatever. and
I
they
think
were
we had them in
scary.
our library, but
Oh, okay.
in my mind, that was for the bad kids to read.
Yeah,
I read
because I
every
mean,
American Girl doll book and every, like, historical diaries book that there was.
this is probably why you like historical fiction now.
Yes.
Okay, well, this though, I would say it does seem like this is based on a true story, just was embellished for the 1981 book.
Okay.
So there are news stories, like international news stories that came out in 1960 and 1961 of a man named John Allen Kuchar Zegras. So this is who people think is the Taured Man.
Okay.
So it's actually like solved, I guess. It's not as fun, but it is interesting. So from the news stories, apparently he had been arrested earlier in I think it was 1959 in Japan for attempting to enter the country using forged documentation, which he claimed to be from Tamanrasset, which is a real city in Algeria. But he claimed that this city was in a sub-Saharan country which is called Taured.
He's the same name, different location.
Yeah. So it was said the forged passport was very good quality in an entirely fabricated language. So he made up a language for Taured. And then he had many details of this made up country, like stating it was located near South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, I think is how you say it. He said the population was 2 million people, and he claimed to be a naturalized Ethiopian citizen. But it was unclear where he originally departed from. But the passport showed he had entered a handful of countries throughout Africa and the Middle East on his way to Tokyo. So, like, people took the passport as real.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I mean, who, if it looks real and you're not highly educated, there's probably countries I've never heard of, even with access to the internet.
Yeah, I guess. But, like, if the passport's in an entirely fabricated language, I guess if you
How do
don't know
you
any.
know?
Right, yeah. I guess only Japan caught that this it seems fake.
Which seems very Japan to me.
Right. Or, like, I wonder if he's faked the stamps.
There must be a way to do it. If you just see a real one, I guess you could carve if you're committed. I mean, you have to be so committed to this bit. Like,
Yeah, carving the stamps by hand and stuff.
right, because how else
Oh
would you
my
do it?
gosh, that's true. But yeah, in the news articles, it says he was thrown in jail to await trial and his passport was confiscated and he was sentenced to 1 year in Japan for using counterfeit checks and documentation. And it said he attempted to kill himself during the trial. And some Western newspapers that ran the story speculated he may have worked for the CIA or FBI, but he was now a man without a nationality because they took away his only documentation
Oh
with him.
my god.
But some people are thinking he was sent as a spy. But the stories said he was never allowed to leave Japan because he had no nationality. And members of the UK Parliament even cited it as an example of the ineffectiveness of passports in their like legislature.
Wow. At that time, yeah. Like, now
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little more legit because they have so many, like, they scan
Oh
them
yeah.
and they. But back then,
Right.
someone was just looking at it and saying, yup, good.
Yeah. Yeah, looks good. Yeah, you could just probably find someone that doesn't really care about their job and go up to them
Right.
too.
Like, how committed are these people to actually doing their job, too?
Yeah. Right. Um, yeah, I do find it like was he a spy or something, but apparently, at least according to the Wikipedia page, these news articles were also kind of embellishing the tale.
I'm not surprised.
So, uh, apparently here's like the real story of the Taured Man. And this was, I think Snopes verified this to the